Welcome, everybody, to another program from Keeping Up with Senior Solutions here at BCTV. And today we are so fortunate to have a couple of special guests. That would be Representative Theresa Wood and Representative Daniel Noyes, who happen to be the co-chairs of the legislators' Older Vermonters Caucus. And we're going to have some nice topics to talk about today, but let me give them a chance. So let's introduce them. Oh, and my co-host Jim is back. So welcome to all three of you. And let's ask Theresa just to introduce herself.
Thank you. I'm Theresa Wood. I hail from Waterbury, and I also represent Bolton, Buell's Gore, and Huntington. I am this session the Vice Chair of the House Human Services Committee, and we're really delighted to be here. And something also about my background that's relevant to today's show, and maybe perhaps where I developed the passion for ensuring that older Vermonters are really meaningful members of our communities. It was through my work at the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living. I was the Deputy Commissioner there prior to leaving state service. So that's just a little bit about my background.
Well, that's
I'm happy
important
to be here. Thank you, Joanne.
Oh, we are really happy that you both are here today. And thank you for your background. That's very helpful and insightful. So, Dan, what about you? How did you get interested in becoming part of the Older Vermonter Caucus?
Sure. So, Dan Noyes, I live in Wolcott. I represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere, and I also serve on the Human Services Committee. I'm the clerk of the committee, so I take the roll call when we vote bills out. In my other job, because you have to have two jobs serving in the legislature, I run a senior corps program. So I run RSVP of Central Vermont and the Northeast Kingdom. And, just through my work as the director of RSVP, I became really interested in how we're making sure that the state is providing services to older Vermonters and making sure that older Vermonters are, a first thought and not an afterthought. So I'm always trying to talk to people about ways that we can make sure older Vermonters don't fall through the cracks.
Great.
I also want to say I am a passenger in a car. My dad and I are driving, so I'm sorry if I bounce around a little bit, but I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Dan, that's great. Thank you. Appreciate it. And don't worry about moving. I tend to jiggle around sometimes, and I'm not even in a car. So, I would like to comment one thing. The fact that you are directing RSVP, we get a lot of volunteers. A lot of our volunteer visitors have come to us through RSVP. And I just want everybody in the listening audience to know, it's not just that Vermont serves older Vermonters. Older Vermonters provide tremendous service to the state, to their communities. So many of the retired individuals in our state continue to work. Maybe they don't get paid, but they're out there every day serving other people in our state. So I think that's one thing we need to remember, particularly as we start to include the older population in our quest for employees. I saw the ad on the state's website for the summer parks and recreation department looking to hire some older people. So I think it's important to know people get older, but they don't become useless, not by a long shot.
I think that's a great point, Joanne. And it's one of the topics that we recently discussed at the Older Vermonters Caucus. And we had Betsy Bishop on from the Vermont Chamber of Commerce to share some of her insights about how we sort of break the ageism cycle that we have in our country and to promote older Vermonters as folks who are willing, able, and interested in continuing to participate not only at the volunteer level, which is incredibly important, but also at the paid level. And I think Dan and I were talking about this morning. We were trying to remember what her phrase was. It was something like, starting their second gig or
side hustle. What was your side hustle?
Your side hustle. Yeah. Well, your side hustle.
I thought it was a great term,
It is a great term. Your side hustle maybe becomes your regular hustle after you've maybe retired from what's been a lifelong career for you, or maybe you've picked up your second or third kind of gig, and it's an opportunity for you really to pursue something that maybe has been an interest for you throughout your life, or maybe later in life that you didn't have the opportunity to do while you were working full time. So really also trying to just touch base with employers and to encourage people to think about the older Vermonter as somebody who is willing, able, and absolutely, great employees as we're looking at how to fix this challenging workforce issues.
Yeah, I agree. And hey, Jim, that makes me think of you talking about the side hustle. You've had a very long career in education before you started at doing the BCTV gig.
Yeah, I was in education for 54 years before I retired 4 years ago, and then had the opportunity to work with Joanne and with Senior Solutions, doing some public relations as well as our television program. I think we all have to do a better job getting the message out to our seniors. That's why this TV program is so important, because from that, we've got phone calls asking for assistance, or can I help out? Can I be a volunteer? I do think as we do really need to work harder. I think the legislature is off to a good start, but I don't think we're connecting enough right to that individual person that's willing to call you up and say, hey, why can't I get hearing aids? Or whatever issues they have, I think the communication piece, we really all have to work on.
Yeah, and I hope that by us having the show today with our guests, we'll encourage people to reach out and to realize that our legislators are accessible. They're interested in our problems. They want to serve their constituents. But if we constituents don't contact our local representatives, they're never going to know what to do while they're in session to help everybody.
That's it's a great point, Joanne. I think that I know Dan and I have talked about this a little bit. We sometimes feel like we're the voice of the older Vermonters in the caucus, because we're the two folks, let's face it, who sort of raise up the issues that impact older Vermonters. And it's not that people are not interested, because they're definitely interested, but honestly, they just don't hear from older Vermonters very often. And so your point is very well taken, to contact your local legislator when there's issues, or when there's things that they might be able to help with, or even just to find out what are they doing about older Vermonter issues, Yeah,
because what do we always hear? It's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease. And
point.
Jim and I know from working with the older population, they're the last people to ask for anything. Right. And older people don't have parents to advocate for them, school teachers to advocate for them, or other interested people in their lives who could pick up the gauntlet and advocate for them. So I think the work that you guys are doing in the Older Vermonter Caucus is extremely helpful. And I notice that since the hour changed from 8 a.m. to noon, you get a lot more activity in that caucus meeting.
That's for sure. One thing at the State House, it is often really hard to find space, and finding a room at noon was nearly impossible before COVID. And then when we started to go on to Zoom and started running the caucuses as a hybrid, then it worked out really well because we have people that can actually come in person and, but even better, people can participate over Zoom. And that's really increased the participation in it. And then also being able to record it and put it out on YouTube so that our colleagues and our constituents and other advocates can kind of check back and see what we talk about and what the issues were, and then, continue the conversation.
So like if somebody wanted to watch the Older Vermonter Caucus, don't they just Google and plug in Older Vermonters Caucus and it pops right up? That's been my experience. So that is so easy to access that. But beyond that, before we get into some real, legislative questions and issues, just curious, how do people contact you? How do you like to be contacted?
Well,
Theresa?
I'll let Dan speak for himself, but for me, I can tell you that the easiest way to contact me is through my legislative email. And all of our emails are pretty much the same. It's our first initial and our last name. So for me, it's twood@bt.leg.state.us. And you can find all that information really just by going to the legislative website. There's a search engine in there, and you can type in your legislator's name. So if you're looking for your local legislator and you want to know how to contact them, you can type in your legislator's name, and all their information, including their voting record and all of that kind of stuff, pops up for you.
Yeah, it's so easy to use that. And you don't even have to, if you're not sure how to even spell the name of your legislator, you can scroll through the list. And it couldn't be easier. But if you don't know about it, you're not going to use it. So hopefully more people will become aware of it. Dan, do you have anything else you want to add to that contact?
Yeah, when you go to the Vermont legislature, you can Google that, you'll come to the webpage. You actually put in your town to figure out who your legislator is. It will pop right up. You'll also have your senators there as well. So your House reps and your senators, and their email address and all their contact information. And easy way to get in touch with me also is through my legislative email. And I got my phone number on there too. So, but usually when we're in committee, it's kind of hard to jump on a phone call, but send me an email, and glad to always connect any way that people feel comfortable.
And I'm going to give a testimonial. When I reached out to both of you, you were both very quick to respond, very, very responsive. And I was really surprised, but very gratified that it was so easy to talk to both of you. So Jim.
Well, we often laugh, Joanne. People say, well, can you just have your staff get back to us? And we just chuckle because there are no staff. We are our own staff. And then they say, when I give a tour of the State House to somebody who hasn't been there, and say, oh, well, where's your office? I said, well, it is this 18 inches in my committee room. And then I have another 18 inches on the House floor. And that, we have no offices and we have no staff. It is just us. So the thing is with emails is like, if you don't respond right away, it'll get buried. So I think that's why you find us. We try to respond right away. So I'm glad that worked.
Yeah, me too.
I have a question about committee work.
Yeah.
Being in education for all my time, I know what committee work is like. All right. Usually falls to about 2 people and everybody else just goes away. But how do you set and get information? How do you set priorities for your committee? What do you do?
You want to take that one, Dan?
Sure, glad to. So each year, all 150 legislators that put bills in, if they pertain to Department of Children and Families, Department of Aging and Independent Living, or Department of Health, Population Health, they end up on the wall in our committee. At the beginning of each session, we take a look and see what's up there, what have we been hearing from our constituents, and we have a committee discussion about what bills are important to us, and we vote. And we kind of prioritize our top 3, and those are the ones we take up. Sometimes it takes a number of years of, putting a bill up on the wall. For instance, 153, which is one that a lot of the agencies that provide services, home and community-based providers, I think that bill's been on the wall longer than I've been there. And now we've taken it up and we've moved it to the Senate, and now the Senate will act on it, hopefully. And then after town meeting, or what they call crossover, is when we start to really focus in on the bills that have come over from the Senate. So first part of the session, we'll look at bills in our committee. And then the second half of the session, we'll take a closer look at some of the Senate bills. It's not to say we won't take up a House bill. However, that's when we really try to prioritize our Senate partners, what their concerns are, what they have heard from their constituents, because we could send bills over to the Senate all the time, and if they don't take it up, it's never going to the governor. Same goes the other way. So it's a two-way street, and that's typically when that crossover is, right about town meeting.
Now, do you often invite people who have, say, concerns about 153 to come in and give testimony, so you get firsthand information from those constituents?
Absolutely. So when the bill was in our committee, we had a series of days where we had economists come in, legislative counsel, which is our lawyers. We had people that would be affected by the bill. And this is with any bill that we take up in committee. And so where residents of Vermont come into the process is during the committee. That's when we want to hear from people that will be affected either adversely, or it will make their lives better to have that particular bill. Once we vote it out of committee, it's amongst us legislators to debate it, which we do on the floor in the public, and then vote it out. The bill goes over to the Senate, and the process happens again. And the senators will have they'll take testimony on a bill from people, residents, and then it goes through that same process again.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks. That's really a good walkthrough through the process. Thank you.
And I just want to add one thing that we are strapped for time, and sometimes we have many people that want to provide testimony, and we try to prioritize and make sure we hear from as many people as possible. And this is where your advocacy to your representative can be really helpful. So if you see a bill that's coming up and you're concerned about it, but they're not on the committee of what's called the Committee of Jurisdiction. So let's say your representative serves on the Agriculture Committee. Reach out to them and say, hey, I just saw in Human Services, they're taking up a bill that affects older Vermonters. And I want you to know how that will, how I feel about that. We talk to each other. We're all colleagues in this. That's kind of the nice thing about Vermont is, it's small state, small legislature. We all know each other by first name. We talk to each other. And when someone's constituent reached out, we might have a conversation on the phone or in the hallway, and then take that information and bring it back to our committee so that we can do a really good job.
I think that's very helpful for us to remember that you all talk to each other. And one thing I do remember from a few trips up to Montpelier, I think the cafeteria is one of the best places to talk about everything. So appreciate the insight that you guys have. Now, we do have some issues brought forth by the Vermont Association of Agencies on Aging. That's the V4A. We're a member. And they have recycled their 2020 legislative priorities into their 2022 priorities. So the good news is you don't have to learn anything new that we're interested in. But the bad news is we're still there. So, there are several things, of course, I'll just give you the high points. Community-based provider increases. That's a big one. Home delivered meals and nutrition increases. The FAMLI, Family Medical Leave, bill enactment, and the Older Vermonters Bill enactment. So these are hot topics. But there's others that you have on your, I guess, dashboard. That would be the H-266 relating to the incremental approach to health insurance coverage for hearing aids. And that just popped up recently in the last session, I think. Could you
Yes,
give us, could you give
was
us a
gonna
little
say,
information?
Sure. I'm the lead sponsor on that bill, and we are making some incremental progress, I will say. One of the things that that's in the healthcare committee, Representative Lipper is the chair of that committee. And one of the things, they did not take any testimony on it last year. However, meaning the healthcare committee, did ask the Department of Financial Regulation to do, there's a formal name for it, but I can't tell you what it's called, but it's to do a review essentially to see whether this should be something that is covered in health insurance plans.
Sunrise review.
Yeah, not really. That's really out of the Office of Professional Regulation.
Yes.
But it's like that, Dan. It's definitely like that. So they did a review of sort of the applicable parts of, the insurance law and all of that kind of stuff. And they determined that it should be added as a covered benefit. The problem is, and so then they've made that recommendation. I believe they've already made that recommendation to the Green Mountain Care Board. The Green Mountain Care Board will then make a decision about that. The issue is that will impact policies that are offered on the exchange, on the healthcare exchange. It doesn't impact Medicaid and it doesn't impact Medicare. Those are the two big insurers for older Vermonters and frankly, everybody else in the country in terms of, their health insurance coverage for people at that stage in life. And so we really also need to so there's incremental progress. We hope that the Green Mountain Care Board will approve that. And then that would then become a requirement for certain health insurance coverage in the state. It does not impact large employers, people who have they're self-insured. In other words, so the state of Vermont is self-insured. Global Foundries is self-insured. Companies or employers that essentially write their own policies would not be covered by that because there's federal rules about that. You can't force them to do certain things. However, it is something that President Biden is also looking at in terms of Medicare coverage. And though this is where advocacy with our federal delegation is really important because it is one of the elements that directly impacts healthcare. It impacts mental health. It impacts social isolation. It impacts so many things that and many people don't even realize it's having that impact on them because usually, unless there's an injury or something like that, the hearing loss is so gradual that people don't realize that they're hearing less and less and less. And it can impact everything from, listening to doctor's instructions to, following along a conversation. And, you tend to sit there and be quiet if you don't really understand what people are talking about. And so there's so many impacts across the lifespan. It really is. I think honestly, it's a critical piece.
Thank you. I really appreciate your insight into all the ways that the lack of hearing impacts older people. Especially, I think a lot of times it also exacerbates early stages of dementia.
Yes.
And that's a growing issue among a lot of adults in this whole country. So it's a big issue. And I know you guys can't solve it yourselves, but I'm happy to hear that you're working on it and you understand how to get that systemic change organized and implemented. So that's great. Jim, did you have a question you'd like to ask?
Well, I guess once you hear from the input like our organizations, like Senior Solutions or other organizations, how do you start prioritizing what you're going to really try to push? I mean, what do we need to do better to give you the information? I know a program like this, I hope you'll get more calls, all right? But what can we do better, all right? We're always looking to improve.
Thank
So,
you.
I'll start, but I do want to hear Theresa's on this also. But I think one of the things that often comes up with ideas or changes we need to make, or things like hearing aids, or any of legislation, paid family leave you were talking about, it's some issues are really hard to solve and it takes years. And there's a lot of money that's associated with solving some of these bigger systemic issues. When other times when we have a small change in policy at Dale, or where it's an easy fix. It's just our laws are outdated, our policies are outdated. We need to make a change. Sometimes those can go through pretty easily. But when you start getting to like paid family leave, which is a massive program, it takes time, and it's not something that Theresa and I could bring up in committee, and then our committee might look at it and say, oh, yeah, sure, we could just take care of that. It would have to go to appropriations. It has to go to the Ways and Means Committee. So all the bills that, or the policies that would be needed to be taken up in more than one committee is a lot longer process. And, but advocating for simple things and the more complex issues is super important, because we want to keep those on in front of us, so we always think about it. And when things come up where we say, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense, this can go with that, or whatever, we can work to solve some of these bigger problems. Theresa?
I think the one thing that always pops into my head, and maybe this is just because this has been a topic in our committee, is the advocates for childcare and young children. There are many organizations that serve young children, everything from schools to childcare centers to family centers to the local economic opportunity offices. They have come together around a single message, and they essentially built a campaign. Now, I will say that it's been very well funded by private funding, but they built a campaign, and they knew that it would take 10 years to get where they feel like they have accessible, affordable, high quality childcare. But they knew what the goal was. And I think that one of the things that it feels a little bit sometimes like the rest of human services is a little bit of a sort of a buckshot approach. It's like there's so many things out there, and you kind of like put forth, so many ideas, and nothing brings people together to coalesce. I will say around 153, H153, and that's the bill that Dan and I worked on that's in the Senate right now around Medicaid rates. There's been a coalescing of providers around that. And so, we saw the area agencies on aging put that on their platform. It's on the designated agencies legislative platform. The home health agencies are all talking about it. So everybody who is impacted by that has come around and, okay, that's on their legislative platform. The Senate really needs to hear from people about 153. This is the last year of the biennium, and if it doesn't pass this year, it fails, and we need to start all over again. And I'm hopeful that we don't do that. But that's the one thing that I would say, Joanne and Jim, is that coming together, if you have a common goal, get as many people as you can to be on the same page and all talk the same language, all talk about what that common goal is. And I think that that's a helpful tool. Like everybody right now, the other thing that everybody is talking about is on everybody's radar is workforce.
Yeah.
You know, what do we do to improve the status of the working Vermonter? What do we do to improve access to workers, get people back in the workforce? It's why we're even talking more about the seasoned, the mature worker getting back into the workforce. But there are thousands of people in Vermont who have dropped out of the workforce, and for lots of different reasons. It can be around childcare. It could be people who've just decided, I can't deal with this pandemic and I was close to retirement, so I'm going to retire. And, I'm hoping that they get back in the workforce when things have settled down on the COVID front. We had lots of teachers leave and retire in the last couple of years because teaching has become, quite difficult during this time. We need to bring those people back into the workforce when things settle down and they've had time to sort of adjust to life after, their full-time career. But it's having a common message and getting everybody behind that common message.
That's a very good point. Very good point. Something we can work for. Yes.
And
thank you.
I might add that, like around workforce, as Theresa was saying, it's kind of a hot topic in the legislature right now, the lack of a workforce. And so we were like, well, make sure we're talking about older Vermonters. So we brought it up in the Older Vermonters Caucus and ended up getting the attention of the Commerce Committee. And Theresa and I actually went in and testified in Commerce. So it's just about kind of elevating the issues that around older Vermonters, and just if you just keep bringing it up, people are like, oh yeah, and make sure those come into the mix when we're developing policy or allocating funds.
Great.
Well, maybe we are talking about that. It's all about communication with each other. Maybe we could do a better job at our organization by having evenings or a time that's good for everybody to have a political action group, or say one week or one thing we're going to talk about some of the bills in the legislature and so forth, to get our seniors, when we ask them when they call and say, can I volunteer to help somebody else? They're going to be on time and they're getting as much out of it as they're giving, And I think we could spend a little bit more time getting them into our organization as worker bees and discuss, let's do political action group. Let's talk about what's in the legislature. What bills can we support? Who should I call? I think we'd get a group to do that.
Yep. That's a good point. And I'm just going to jump in real fast to let everybody know that I did meet with our advisory council co-chair, and she has graciously agreed to work together with all of us and get the advisory council members actively engaged. So from helping, to attend town meetings on behalf of our organization, to encouraging their friends and relatives to reach out to their legislators, to drum up support for some of these issues that we need to bring forth. I think you're right. Our volunteers who are retired people, they're an amazing resource, and we have not used them efficiently. It's almost like we were protecting them, but they don't need protection. These people are so vital. And, during COVID, when they couldn't visit anybody, they were part of the vulnerable population. They were aching to get out and do things. So I think the more we ask of them, the more they want to give.
That's right.
And sometimes it's hard for us to remember. So,
Joanne, I want to build on that a little bit, because
go ahead,
it's a
jump
really
in.
good point. And I think when we have a bill that comes up in committee that's, let's say it's looking at childcare, I get so many emails and letters and, you know, outreach from my constituents, from people that live in Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, Belvedere, the 4 towns that I represent. And they're saying, hey, this childcare bill is fantastic and you should vote for it. And then one thing that happens with the childcare is after I vote for it, I get letters thanking me for voting for it.
There you go.
And that is very well organized.
Yes.
Theresa, I don't know if you want to add on that, but I'm always impressed with their outreach and their follow through in childcare.
Yes, I will say the same thing. I don't need to repeat what Dan just said, but I think about, H288, the hearing aid bill. And honestly, if everybody on the healthcare committee heard from 5 people on the hearing aid bill, we might actually get them to take it up. And it doesn't sound like very much, but if you hear from 5 people and they're writing their own email, not some, we get a lot of what I call, junk email as well, but people who just, they don't even realize they're sending something and, it comes out as a mass mailing and their name is inserted in something. And, we get a bunch of form letters in email as well. And sometimes people think that that's effective. It's not really that effective, but
no, that's a very good point. It's that personal touch.
It makes a difference.
Oh yeah. And regarding that, I'm sorry to talk so much, but was talking today to our NCOA, National Council on Aging Benefits Enrollment Center outreach person who also, does applications. We were talking about affordable housing for the aging population. And she has struggled for months to find any participating organization or housing authority or senior housing or affordable housing group that has anything available for people. We're talking about people that maybe get $800 a month, but don't have any other expenses because they don't have a car. It was a veteran, so he got medical care. The only out-of-pocket expense he would have had was going to be $20 for, I forget what, like a prescription, maybe. She could not get him accepted at any place because, number one, they said, oh, he doesn't have 3 times the income level of what the rent would be. Number 2, well, we don't have any availability. And the problem is also difficult because many of these people are 80 years old and a waiting list virtually means they're homeless for the rest of their lives. And this is not an isolated case. This is everybody practically that she's been dealing with. And that has to go across the board in Vermont.
Yeah, we have heard about that. Just here in my downtown, we're talking about a potential housing development on what used to be, it's still state owned, but there used to be state office buildings on it. And it's located in a residential section. It's downtown. It already has public water, public sewer, plenty of parking. And we're talking about trying to get the Department of Buildings and General Services to work with either a housing developer or local housing, like in our neck of the woods, it's called Down Street, but the folks like that who develop housing. But I don't say but, and it is mixed residential. We're looking for workforce housing. Waterbury has kind of become a resort vacation town. And the restaurants here, the people can't afford to live in Vermont because they can't find a place that that they can afford to rent, never mind purchase right now because of the housing prices. But I've had over the summer, several people talk to me, older Vermonters, say, well, I'm not, right now I'm okay in my house, but I don't think I want to live here the rest of my life. It's getting to be a lot for me to take care of. And, I wouldn't mind selling my house, but where am I going to go? I want to stay in my community. And, there really isn't anything that I can afford. Rentals in Waterbury are $2,000 a month plus utilities. It's, and I hear, and yet we have this big vacant lot because the state just tore down 2 buildings. And so, it's an issue that is all over the state of Vermont. And now Dan's worked on things, you don't think about it being interconnected, but
they are interconnected, yes.
Act 250, some of the provisions of Act 250 prohibit, what we would consider downtown development in some of these more rural towns that don't have town sewer and water, so how do you get around some of those things? All these, there's lots of things that are interconnected to these conversations that we try to be involved in. It's difficult to be involved in all of them, frankly, but there's lots of things to advocate for. That is for sure.
Yeah, and unfortunately, just because you may be an older Vermonter, you're still engaged in all of these ongoing issues that affect everybody else too. It's not like there's like 3 issues that address older Vermonters. Older Vermonters are touched by everything that happens in the state. And that must be like a kaleidoscope of opportunities for committees for you guys to work with. So lots of luck.
Totally the case. I remember when we were talking about passing the Older Vermonters Act, I think, Dan, this might have been something you said, or you might have told me the story, but, when we talked about the interconnectedness, and one of the things we said in the Older Vermonters Act is that this is not just about the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living doing a state plan. This is much, much broader than that. This reaches across all of state government. And so one of the things that we used as an example, walkable streets are just as important for a young mom or dad with a baby trying to push a stroller as it is to somebody with a walker trying to get to the bank. And so when you make improvements for older Vermonters, you're helping young families at the same time. And it's just good. It's just good building. It's like what the advocates talked about when they revised the building codes to, so that all new construction needs to meet ADA accessible building codes. What's good for people with disabilities is good for everybody.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of the mantra that we try to use is like good policy is just good policy. It's going to be good for not just a small portion of the population or, just one aspect. It's good for people in many different life circumstances, and life stages. So we have to keep those things in mind because that helps us build allies for the work that we want to do.
Very good point. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know. Do you have another question?
Some of the housing because.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Sorry. The housing is so crucial because we look at rural Vermont and our little villages don't have a lot of housing that's affordable, accessible, single story, that would work well for someone who's looking to move. I always think about this as someone who lives in my town, Wolcott, lives up on East Hill. If they wanted to move down into the village and have a place to live, but still be connected to the community that they grew up in, there's nothing there. So I'm always trying to think about how do we make sure that that's a priority of my town. So getting involved with your planning commission, making sure that affordable housing in your village center is a priority of the town, it goes a long way. And I've got a couple of pieces of legislation I'm working on that try to remove some of the barriers to build in our village centers. And yeah, we just need to make sure that that if someone wants to develop, if we have water and sewer, fantastic. If we don't, then how do we get to that point where we have that? So we have development where we want it and still have the working landscape to find that balance. So
Nice.
Good idea. Wow. I've learned a lot today.
Yeah, I'm so happy and grateful that we're doing all of this discussion. It's
Well,
wonderful.
I can't believe how busy they are.
And they do it.
They're sitting in the ivory tower and just, oh, I'll be nice and I'll get elected again. I want to talk to you. I think more people need to visit our elected officials, talk to them. I know Tom Bach is a friend of mine in Chester. He's always soliciting people, and I think most of you folks are. All right. My question is, how often do our federal elected people connect with you folks?
Well, they were at the Older Vermonters Caucus last week. So can I call up Bernie or Senator Leahy? No, but
No.
I have a great relationship with their staff. And, if somebody comes to me, one of my constituents has a problem with something, I can always reach out to our congressional delegation if it's something around Social Security or getting their tax return or whatever it is, something that's kind of a pay grade higher than me. I think we have a great relationship. And I can tell you that our congressional delegation really cares about Vermonters, and we get great response. I don't know how much they have to get involved with kind of solving a problem, but their staff is really good about working with us. So don't be afraid to reach out to your legislator and say, hey, I'm having a problem with the VA, or I'm having a problem with my tax return or something, because we can reach out to, for instance, Beth Stern, who used to work for the Council on Aging, now works for Senator Sanders. So, I've known her for years, so I can call her up on the phone and say, hey, I'm having this problem. Can you help me figure it out? Or where would you send me? How do I solve this problem for my constituent? And, we have those great working relationships. So it's important.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We really are.
Right.
So this is really, really important. I think getting the message out so that people are aware of how much work you can get done in 18 inches of space. Unbelievable.
I tell you, in our committee, we deal with the entire lifespan from prenatal through end of life in our committee. And it's a very interesting work. And, I encourage other people to, as Jim was saying, visit with your legislators. Yeah, Representative Bach Tom is great. And I encourage you to find out who your legislator is and to call them up. With Zoom now, you can have a face-to-face sort of meeting. And most people are willing to do meetings on Mondays like this because it is our sort of our constituent office day. And for those of us who have other jobs like Dan, he's generally doing his other job. But it is one of those things that we really find valuable in hearing from constituents. It's really, really important to our work. And for those folks who don't reach out, for legislators who don't reach out as much, it's important to reach out to them because they need to know that you're there, that you're watching what they're doing, that you're interested in what they're doing, and that you've got some ideas of your own, if you're sitting out there. And I will have to say that I was probably before I was in the legislature, I might have done that twice, before I got involved. And now I realize really how important that it is. And so I can tell you that when I'm when I'm done with this phase of my life's journey, I will definitely be continuing to reach out to whoever sits in this seat when I'm done with it.
Well,
Or when
I should say
when the voters are done with it.
Yeah, I remember years ago, I reached out to my representative, Stephanie Bordeaux. It was probably 20 something years ago I don't even remember what the issue was. And she was so glad that I called, and she was like talking my ear off. I still remember it today, that she was so enthusiastic that I called her about a particular issue that I was interested in. And she was like, tell me more. Why are you interested? What can we do to make this better? And, so it's great to have those conversations. Both, where people are, trying to figure out how to make Vermont a better place to age in, or as we talk about, the best place to age in. So,
right. Mm-hmm. The one thing that around individuals, that just made me think what you were saying, Dan, made me think that it's not only just advocating for a particular bill or issue. We have what we call constituent services too. So if people have a particular issue, like, whether they don't know the appeal process for a decision that they've received, or they don't know if they might be eligible for something, or they're having, I had a constituent contact me about how to get a car towed, who was parking in her business's designated parking area. So we get inquiries about all sorts of different things, but legislators are here to assist their constituents as well. And I just think that's an important thing to put out there.
Thank you. That's great. I'm just overwhelmed. I have one more question, if you can believe it. I think it's the last one. I'm not sure. I can't promise. But in talking with our advisory council co-chair, we have I've been in touch with Evan, your intern, who's working on the Bill Watch. So we're going to be very attentive to the Bill Watch, and we're going to make it a two-way communication between our advisory council members and the two of you. Excellent. So I hope you don't mind.
No, not at all. So the each year, I found that I can get an intern from UVM to help out with our caucus. And in fact, it's pretty interesting. Last year's intern was from Chester.
You're kidding?
No, he was. He
knew Tom. He knew Representative Fox. He knew Tom. Yeah.
Okay.
Jim, you probably know him too.
Brian Anderson. He was an amazing young man. He did great work. He was always on time. He was always eager to help, and he could help me with the technology on Zoom and YouTube. And it was awesome.
Nice. That's my dream.
Yeah. Totally.
Wonderful. So we're excited. We'll stay in touch, and let us know if you have something coming up that you're concerned about, or you need more support, or you need more testimonials or stories to be able to tell to the other legislators that a lot of times if you don't touch the heartstrings, it goes in one ear and out the other.
Personal stories make a huge difference. I can tell you that. And we try to hear in our committee right now, one of the issues we're working on is services for adults with developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes this affects older Vermonters, because oftentimes the individuals are still living at home with parents who are 70, 80s, some 90s, and they're concerned about what's going to happen to their adult son or daughter when they're gone. And so, we are hearing from people, particularly this coming week, people's individual stories and what it's like as a parent, what it's like as an individual, and what are the options that we need for services and supports in our state. And again, that's an issue that affects older Vermonters. When you say we're working on services for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, you might not just connect that with older Vermonters, but it totally is an older Vermonter issue because many folks are living at home with older parents, and these folks with disabilities are getting older themselves.
That's true.
So it's important. So, there's many things that cross over the different topics that we take up in committee.
This is totally not totally off point, but that makes me think of back in the day when I was running the Chamber of Commerce. My bookkeeper's husband was the vice president of Bennington College, and they had a developmentally challenged son. He was grown up. He had a job in the college mailroom, and everyone at the college loved him. They ended up moving to the retirement home in Nashville where their older daughter lived because the husband developed Parkinson's. So, they're looking at their life becoming much more challenging. How are they going to care for the grown-up son? And luckily, the daughter was very reliable. And, so the family came together. But not everybody's in that situation. Not everybody's that fortunate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good point.
So I appreciate you bringing that forward to our attention. So maybe we could put a call out to the people in our area and just find out, if any of them themselves are living in this situation and have maybe an older child that they're going to be looking into the future about, or do they know someone? And if they do, could they get in touch with you and, relay their situation and their story?
Absolutely. And we have a number of parents. There's a pretty strong parent group down from your neck of the woods getting involved in this. So I don't think everybody's involved down there, but, so it'd be great if people watching this understand that they can contact us to tell their personal story. That's great.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sorry to see that we only have about 3 minutes left. So I guess I have to just say thank you very, very much. We appreciate all the work you're doing and continue to do.
Absolutely.
And I hope that people will see this and look for it on our website. We'll send it around to the other public access TV stations. And let's get this conversation really going and help support all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.